Legislature is back from session. Prior to going to lunch, there was points of orders that were presented before the chair, before the body. And after review and discussions and working with legal counsel, I'm going to make the ruling that based on all 6 points of order, we can proceed with the bill. We can proceed with the bill. That is my order.
So, Mr. Speaker, at this time, I move that Bill 235-38, as amended in committee, amended on the and further amended on the floor, be placed in the third reading file.
Point of order. Point of order.
What's your point of order?
Point of order is that being that there was an award, according to Guam procurement law, remedies for procurement awards. If the person awarded the contract has not acted fraudulently or in bad faith, so it states a contract may be terminated and the person awarded the contract shall be compensated for the actual expenses reasonably incurred under the contract plus a reasonable profit prior to the termination. And so I think there are serious implications if we're going to meddle in a live procurement, and it may require the withdrawal, cancellation of a permit. Any remedies after the award can lead to monetary damages to the government of Guam. At this point, we do not know the extent to these monetary damages. The other thing is, according to 9102 GCA, a bill should not be reported out by standing committee of a legislature in Guam or placed on a legislative session unless it is accompanied by fiscal note or waiver thereof prepared by the Bureau of Budget and Management Research in coordination with the affected department, agency, or appropriate government instrumentality, and is complied with the other requirements of this chapter. The fiscal note shall be required for all bills that have an effect upon the revenues or expenditures of any funds of the government of Guam. The waiver of fiscal note shall be required for all bills that do not have an effect upon the revenues or expenditures of any funds in the government of Guam. Failure to provide the fiscal note or waiver thereof pursuant to section 9105 of this chapter shall not preclude the standing committee from reporting out to the legislative session any bill as provided in section 9106 of this chapter. So this has monetary implications because it's meddling in with a live procurement, and so it is not. That's my point of order.
Mr. Speaker, can I address the point of order?
No, hang on. I'm going to rule the point of order out of order.
Thank you.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, now I move to place.
May I ask? Sorry. Point of inquiry. Can I ask the reason for dismissal of the point of order after clearly stating that it has fiscal impact, and this substitute bill, which is brand new, there is no fiscal note attached to this, considering there might be monetary damages. So what is the reason?
Your point of order.
Legal. We're going to have legal.
I'm waiting to hear the procedural concern here.
Yeah, this is the point of order that this
that
is a
like
new
an
bill.
argument against the bill.
No, this is a point of order because this bill is a new bill. It does not have a fiscal note that's updated to address the concern that it can impact revenues, expenditures of the government of Guam. We don't know the full extent, considering that after an award is given, should the agency cancel this bid, the government of Guam has to pay the party. And so we don't know what is the amount, and we don't have a fiscal note determining that amount that is going to cost the government of Guam. Is it in the millions of dollars? Are we going to take that millions of dollars away from what's already appropriated? So, really, it's a point of order, Mr. Speaker.
That sounds more like an argument. Overruled. You can proceed.
Mr. Speaker, I now move
point of
that
order,
we.
Mr. Speaker. Point of order.
What's your point of order, ma'am?
I would ask that the Speaker please make rulings on these points of orders. The points of orders are legitimate. For example, If you are ruling that the bill is not materially different, please say so. If you're ruling that it did not violate the open government law, please say so. If you're saying it did not violate the statute that says we have to have a public hearing, please say so. If you're saying it does not violate the statute that was just pointed out by my colleague regarding necessity of a fiscal note, that for some reason it doesn't violate that, please be specific. Otherwise, we don't know what we're overruling. You're just saying none of those are valid. But you have to make a ruling, a finding. It has to be that this bill is not materially different.
I did consider all of it, and I'm
that there
saying-
was a public hearing on the big change in here, that there was no violation of the need to go into committee of the whole, all of the
I'm
things
going
that
to
we
repeat.
listed.
I have reviewed and I have considered all 6 points of order that you have presented, and I have ruled that none of this has ready. I am overruling, or not, I'm ruling against your points of order. Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, now I move that we place Bill 235-38 as amended in committee and further amended on the floor into the third reading file. And Mr. Speaker, on my opening, I already have described all of the pertinent areas of the bill. I do not need any additional time, so I ask that you respectfully request to deliberation on the floor and accept placement in third reading file for discussion.
On the motion,
I object to the substitution of the bill,
thank you.
Mr.
There is an objection. All those in favor of moving the bill?
No, I'd like to
third
speak on
reading,
that
please.
motion, Mr. Speaker. It's a motion to substitute the bill, and I'd like to speak on it.
Okay, you can speak on it, ma'am.
Thank you. Again, we had a public hearing on the original bill. I don't think there's going to be any objection to that. I think our rules require us to go into committee of the whole so that we can make sure. But I think that there were certain things said this morning that were actually false. For example, that the brand new section of this bill was recommended by BBMR. There's nothing in the record that indicates that, and the director of BBMR denies that. There is also another statement made this morning that GITA has no objection to this. Again, there is no record of that in the committee report. At the committee hearing, the director said that was the first time she ever heard of the idea. It was not vetted by her, and she said, I don't know, I haven't reviewed that. And there is nothing in our desks or in this committee report that indicates otherwise. So, and it's not even clear whether this is absolutely necessary. And we're going through all of this for an amendment that might not be necessary, but very much puts us at risk of interfering with an award of a procurement. And I feel like this is some kind of backdoor way to do that. We can't tell because we can't get the people here to talk to them about it. It seems like the parties to the procurement haven't had notice of this. And I'm not understanding why it's so urgent or compelling to substitute this bill when we can move forward with Simon Sanchez today, adding that they're going to use the money for these additional expenses and then put the entire construction, again, at risk of delay. That's the danger in substituting the bill, especially when it is not necessary. If there's already an award, then that's not necessary. If there's a protest, then we are interfering in the middle of that. I haven't seen a decision yet. Or is that what we're trying to do? I can't help but ask that, Mr. Speaker, because if this language is harmless, then it seems unnecessary. And we're forcing a change to the law that authorized the construction of Simon Sanchez while there is an award pending for the construction of Simon Sanchez. If that's not in the middle of a procurement, I don't know what is. And I'm just saying the risk is much greater than the benefit of going forward with the original bill. That will allow us what the author wants, to allow them to use the money to tear the existing building down too. If that wasn't already included, they were moving forward. They were announcing and everybody was going to show up for the big grand demolition of the building. And are they going to tell us now that they needed this language in order to do that? I hope you agree, Mr. Speaker, that just not making that much sense. But for sure, the risk does not outweigh what we can do to move forward. And I really would like to have those people down here to tell us this is not going to interfere with the procurement, and that is not what we're doing in this body, is trying in purpose to interfere with that procurement, Mr. Speaker. So for those reasons, I object to the substitute bill, and I just ask that we go forward with the original bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman from...
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to address the comments of the retiring speaker and explain why most of those are erroneous.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. He does not have this opportunity except in his closing on the motion.
You opened up the floor, Mr. Speaker, for discussion on
your motion.
I want to remind the body that we're still in the motion to accept the substitute bill.
Absolutely.
That was his motion. He spoke on it, and now I'm speaking on that motion as well.
No, this is his bill.
I get to speak on the fact that you're objecting to the motion. You want to speak to it, so I get to speak to that as well.
You can speak on closing on your motion. You made a motion. You have a closing.
I can speak at this point as well. Mr. Speaker, I want to address the points that were made by the retiring speaker.
Point of order,
Why
Mr.
don't we do
Speaker.
this? We'll go ahead and then address them in totality. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from EPEN, you're recognized.
Sidus Masia, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to rise and speak on the motion to substitute the bill, which I vehemently oppose. My dear people of Guam, let me just tell you what's really going on here. First, let's address the rules, which my colleagues in the majority always seem willing to bend or break when it suits them. This was the bill that was introduced. Okay, the bill basically allows the use of the $16 million that we appropriated back in the budget for associated pre-development stage expenses like the demolition.
Remind the gentleman that he speaks to the chair.
I'm speaking to the motion,
You're
sir.
speaking to the chair.
Okay, well, I'm talking to the people of Guam, but I'm just going to look at the,
Speak to the chair.
speaker. I don't know, is this the kind of governor you're going to be, Mr. Speaker?
Speak to the chair.
Huh?
Speak to the chair.
Yeah, so Mr. Speaker, the bill was that was introduced does exactly what I just told the people of Guam it does, but the problem is there was a bait and switch. There was a bait and switch, Mr. Speaker. We came in prepared to discuss this bill, which I believe had the support of a majority of members in this body, but it was baited and switched. Now in the public and in the author's opening, he had cited that the amended version included a section that at the suggestion of a Mr. Henry Titano, who I'm not sure what the affiliation Mr. Titano has with any company that this section would benefit, Mr. Speaker. Now, just going back to the public hearing, the administrator of the Guam Economic Development Authority, Tina Garcia, who we just confirmed, didn't even want to talk about the amendment because she was worried that it would impact the protest. Didn't even want to talk about it. And she was asked about it by our good colleague from Hoggett and Gigo. What about this amendment from Mr. Titano? And she basically said it may impact the protest, but I don't even want to talk about it, Mr. Speaker. And this is why we see delay after delay with Simon Sanchez. They're going to get up and they're going to say, oh, we're opposed to the construction of Simon Sanchez. But every time we meddle with this procurement process and insert politics, because we're trying to serve the interest of somebody special, it leads to further delays. So if you want to pull a bait and switch on the people of Guam, you want to pull a bait and switch on Simon Sanchez, of course we're going to stand up and fight it, Mr. Speaker. Also, just want to object to your rulings on these very valid points of order. We're talking about violations of the open government law. We're talking about violations of laws, violations of our own standing rules. And that's not even getting into the merits of this section that was added in the bait and switch. We don't know if this is going to interfere with the protest. We don't know if this is going to jeopardize the awarding of the bid. We don't know if this is going to send the construction of Simon Sanchez all the way back to step one, Mr. Speaker. So if you want to rule up there with an iron fist and throw away accountability and transparency just because it's an election year, that's your prerogative, Mr. Speaker, but don't bang the gavel hard when we stand up to get in the way.
Thank you very much, sir. Anybody else? There's been an objection. Gentlelady from Barragata, you want to add to this?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in full opposition to the substitute bill. This is a clear violation of procurement law. In the documents provided by DPW, the response to one of the solicitors or the offerers in regards to financing, they respond, the McCaw Act allows for the new Simon Sanchez High School to be alternatively financed through short-term debt, mortgage, loan, federally guaranteed loan, or loan by any instrumentality of the United States of America, if such financing will better serve the needs of the people of Guam, subject to the approval of Y Legislature and Guahan. Any departure from financing authorized in the McCaw Act must be better than municipal bonds secured by GITA. However, given the need to obtain legislative approval for any alternative financing, this will set the project completion back and will disrupt the schedule set forth in the RFP. And it goes on to refer to attached template. So there's clear evidence. This substitute bill will set back the rebuild of Simon Sanchez. And we all want to help Simon Sanchez get to that finish line. This will set it back, clear in black and white. Not only that, the other violation of procurement law, in this particular substitute bill, it states community development financial institutions programs. So it specifically states that. There are only 2 CDFIs on Guam currently registered. One is the Community First Credit Union. The other is Cortec. Procurement law clearly states, it's a principle of procurement law. So in one of the policies and purposes of the procurement law, it shall foster effective, broad-based competition within the free enterprise system and provide for increased public confidence in procedures followed by in public procurement, and provide safeguards for the maintenance of a procurement system of quality and integrity. So there's evidence here that this substitute bill violates procurement law, and not only that, it sets back the rebuild of Simon Sanchez, which I am vehemently opposed to. Thank you.
Any other senators on the motion to substitute the bill? Gentlelady from Tamuning, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon to my colleagues. I hope you had a good lunch. Get ready to tackle some of the things that we need to do to ensure that we cross our T's and dot our I's is the most important thing. So one of the concerns that I have here, because we heard in the public hearing when the question was asked by one of our colleagues on the particular amendment that was before us, this prior substituted bill, that we could, Gita said that they wanted to wait to look at this thoroughly before, incorporating anything else other than what the bill stated. As the oversight chair of Gita, and because we're coming into this situation, making sure that, and I'm sure everyone here wants to see Simon Sanchez finally built. That was the intention. And I'm sure all those people who co-sponsored this bill as well, co-sponsored a bill that has been now substituted. So it's a different animal that we're dealing with. But that being said, as I spoke to Gita, I was told that they could not speak on it because of procurement. Now, if they can't speak on something that's in front of us because of procurement issues, then there is something wrong with this legislation here, this substituted version. Because it has to do with procurement. The last thing we want to do is to have the 38th Guam Legislature once again, not this legislature, but prior legislature, but this 38th Guam Legislature, to stop the progress of Simon Sanchez. I'm pretty sure we all agree, even those who signed up on this legislation, the original bill that was put in front of us. There was no controversy, there was no issues made about it. I think we all agreed upon that. I do know that once the procurement, protest has been completed, we can easily come back to this body and make changes. But why do you want to jeopardize again Simon Sanchez by putting this substituted version that's obviously has some issues to it? We can always come back, colleagues. Move forward with the original bill so that there is no issues that's going to delay it even longer. And if we have to come back and be redundant by incorporating community development, CDFI, the EB5, all those things that were just put in here in the second draft, which even legalists said is already included in the law. The current law allows for these inclusions. The contractor, and the current law says the contractor may use an alternative method of financing, including, but not limited to, comma, a short-term debt, mortgage loan, federally granted loan, or a loan by an instrumentality of the United States of America. And then you put again, including but not limited to, again, that's the inclusion now. You're being redundant. Because the first part, which is currently in law, already covers that section. I have no problem with the first bill that was heard in the public hearing room. But there is an issue here. And when you have Gita who can't speak on it because of a procurement, and when you have some people from Adelup who are saying, hey, we're good with Section 8, but 58 is not ours. It makes you wonder, is somebody setting this body up? So let's do our due diligence. Put a bill that was originally introduced through. Once a procurement is done, and we don't jeopardize what's going on right now, we can come back to this body and incorporate additional tasks, additional, funding sources if you want. But don't be the senator that delays it again and causes an issue. We've waited too long for Simon Sanchez to be built. And I can tell you right now, taking the original one is not going to delay it. Taking the original bill that was introduced and heard in the public hearing is not going to delay it. This substituted version could delay it, could cause problems. So which one do you want to vote on? Which one do you think the people of Guam are going to want you to vote on? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. On the objection, or on the motion to substitute the bill, Senator Dueñas, you can close it.
Excuse me, Mr. Speaker. I just want to address some of the issues brought up by the previous speakers. First and foremost, I did not say that ADLUP agreed with or endorsed the second portion. One, in my opening, I talked about their request for the bill to ensure that pre-development could go forward. Let's be clear on that. The second is, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for researching your ruling very thoroughly, clearing it with legal, like legal has cleared this particular amendment as not being substantively different. In fact, in my conversations with legal and some who have made representations of legal in previous comments on the floor, it is understood, correct. The amendment that was placed in the substitute bill, correct, identifies the funding in the Makahat Act, with the exception of adding these explicit language which have been used and are not a violation of Guam law. There have always been offerings under the, and it's being explicit now here, CDFI programs. It's one of the great programs that Guam has, so financial institutions on Guam can get a piece of the action. It's the reason why the original financing talks about all the different federal programs. Being explicit in EB5 is because that current program could possibly be in danger going forward, but will not be retroactively. That has already been researched. So the fact is this is not any violation of procurement law. It is reiterating finance opportunities and could possibly add to the savings that could build a better Simon Sanchez with more opportunities to make a better school for our people and for the Sharks. That's the simple truth. Debate the merits on arguing the bill on the floor if you want to continue to do that. And I'll debate the same point I'm making when I close on the bill, when it hits the floor. And so far, I have not seen one of my co-sponsors on this bill object. And I've spoken to each and every one of them, and they understand the principle. Now, with Mr. Henry Taitano, you can call him out all you want, but he's a citizen who can come down here and make comments in a public hearing. He's entitled just as much as anybody else. Malfunction, who else wants to come down here? Well, Malfunction can listen. Later on, as a public person, of course, he can come back down here like anybody else. There's nothing special about Henry Taitano. He's just like everybody else. Now, to the fact that Gita is not going to speak to it, my point was they don't object to it. They haven't objected to it. Not speaking to it doesn't mean they object to it. Not speaking to it is taking their position the way they want to take their position. Being careful, there's nothing wrong with that. But clearly, I think everybody from the top official in Gita down to those who have done financing understand that the programs enumerated in this amendment that is now in the substitute bill are well-known programs that don't violate procurement, that add to the bill the Makahat Act that enumerates all of the funding opportunities. That's about as simple and elementary as it can be. So, Mr. Speaker, I now once again reiterate my motion and call for the vote after the objection.
There has been an objection to substitute bill number 235-38 COR. All those in favor of substituting the bill, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion passes. On substitute Bill number 235-38, COR. Are there any senators wishing to speak on the bill? On substitute Bill 235-38, COR. Are there any senators? Gentlelady from Georgia, ma'am, you're recognized.
Mrs. Mossy, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask if the author of the bill would yield in regards to Section 2, which is the language that's been added after the public hearing and at request of one of those testifying. Is there anything, this language says that we're going to say the contractor may use an alternative method of financing, and already the language says including but not limited to, and then lists different methods of financing. And this amendment now would change that law that's already been used to solicit the contractor and financing. It says we're going to add the words, again, including but not limited to CDFI programs such as the Capital Magnet Fund and other programs. So my question to the author is, does the original law prevent the use of these programs? Because I heard no testimony to that regard. In fact, I think we heard opposite from counsel, and the author's fully aware of that. But I'd like to ask if he has some special information that tells him that these programs are not available under this procurement, and that we have to specifically enumerate them for some reason.
The author yield to the question.
I do yield, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I do believe, and those who believe that availing of all opportunities, including my co-sponsors, believe that we needed more clarity. We needed more clarity to be able to enumerate them as an amendment to this proposal that matches the McCahat Act and the procurement and all other federal programs. That's certainly true. And like a previous, just to make sure, so that everybody's not fooled by one point, and it says to better serve the needs of the people of Guam, subject to the approval of a legislature in Guam. That is also the language that is put in after. So that's also why it's not a procurement violation. So yes, they need to be specifically enumerated.
Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Yes, if the author would yield, who is giving him this advice? Because we have not heard from GIDA, nor DPW is actually doing the procurement, nor has it been put on the record that any of those contractors who are involved in this procurement have requested this language.
The author yield to the question.
Mr. Speaker, is based on the research of my staff.
Well, thank you for yielding, and Mr. Speaker, I find that highly unusual that we are going to rely on policy that neither GIDA nor DPW, who are doing the procurement for the benefit of the people of Guam, is advocating. And that council has told us is not necessary, and again puts us at high risk of interfering with this procurement and causing another reason for a protest. I'd also like to know, when GIDA was questioned about this at the hearing, excuse me, if I could speak, Mr. Speaker, without interruption. The GIDA, when asked about whether they like this language, said, so at this point, the request may impact discussions tied to the protest. So I don't have an issue with what's being proposed, but without looking at the amendment, I can't speak to it at this time or his proposal. I'd like to reserve judgment, just to make sure I'm not speaking anything tied to the protests. And again, the author of the bill could not produce anything to show that this is necessary or will not interfere with the protest. On Section 3, this was the language recommended by BBMR. And I wanted to ask, so BBMR claims that this language is now necessary in order to do what exactly? What associated pre-development stage expenses are anticipated by this? And there's no set amount here, so I'd like to know why not? Why do we not know what pre-development stage expenses we are looking at? If the author would yield.
Would the author yield to that question?
I believe Lester Carlson, the director of BBMR, the main, and that's why it's the one that's spoken to clearly in the bill. The main one, of course, is the demolition. And like the previous speaker said, we were supposed to be there to do the demolition. No, we were supposed to be there to do a groundbreaking. And you know what, Mr. Speaker, because I have to expand on this. This is why Lester asked me personally to do this, is because we would have had a beautiful groundbreaking. But guess what? Unless we had an appropriation to demolish that building, we would have been here anyways. Because in the budget, and that was language that was provided by BBMR and agreed to by OFB, there was an oversight that pre-development would mean demolishing the current building and preparing the grounds. There are other associated expenses that maybe BBMR can send us a text or an email, but they had discussed that there are others prior to that as well, plus going out to market. There's so many expenses associated with this, and this is why it was interesting during the budget period, where they were asking us all these questions and saying, this is why this first $16,800,000 to be appropriated now will pave the way going forward. That appropriation. And they even talked about, we can pull up the record, that it was not necessarily because that was going to be the first debt service. Debt service will not come until this project is complete. So this will be foregoing, Mr. Speaker, to include possibly interest payments that we have not appropriated from this legislature. There is a list of things that will be associated with this $16.8 million. I hope that answers the question, Mr. Speaker. And we weren't there to break the building. We were there to break the ground.
Answer your question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't believe, well, it just highlights why do we not have that list? Why do we not have the list that we are being asked to approve here, the pre-development stage expenses? What is that? And is it going to take the entire 16 million or not? How much do we have left of that for actual construction? How much are they going to allocate? Is there a cap? The reason why, that's why I think when we talk about these types of amendments to our expenditures, bills, laws, that's why we're supposed to have committee of the whole, so that we can get the list. I think the people of Guam deserve the list of what we're diverting money now from construction to pre-development stage expenses, and I think it's very reasonable to ask them, where's that list? What is that going to be for, and how much? What is the cap going to be?
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. The fiscal note indicates that there's no need for the committee of the whole, because this is ministerial and administrative in nature. Please read it. And that's their words. So we do not have to go to committee of the whole for this, because now we're talking about actually the first section of the bill, which was requested from the governor's office. The fiscal note clearly says we don't need to do that, because this is administrative and ministerial.
The fiscal notes does not tell us what to do about our rules, that it does not say anywhere in here that it does not require committee of the whole. It says we're amending the language for the allowable expenditures from the appropriation. It also says that the Director of the Department of Administration, in reference to the proposed legislation, has stated DOA does not believe it is sound fiscal policy to use an interim CRER to identify available funds after the year has closed. That being the June 2025 Consolidated Revenue and Expenditure Report as cited in Public Law 3860. That's my next question, if the author would yield. Why are we using June 2025 after the DOA has said that, and we've already closed out the fiscal year We have the September 2025. We know that we spent some of that money for SNAP benefits when the federal government shut those down. Why are we still reflecting this non-accurate, according to DOA, not sound policy of citing June 2025 CRERs?
With all due respect, ma'am, that's law already.
Yes,
It's got nothing to
Mr.
do with bill.
Speaker, if you want to debate me, please come down here. I respectfully ask you.
I understand.
I
I'm not
yield,
debating.
Mr. Speaker. I yield.
Okay.
I yield, Mr. Speaker. First of all, once again, this money is already appropriated. This is not an appropriation measure. This is an authorization measure to do activities pre-development. The second is, Mr. Speaker, that's fine for the DOA director to make that comment about not sound fiscal policy. So that means that if he feels that he cannot use the $16 million, 800,000 for this pre-development that his BBMR director asked for, well, good for them then. They can come back to us and send us down an appropriation that's appropriate. I actually found that very, very mysterious myself here. For the DOA director to come in there when there's a budget that's been passed, it's been recognized as a sound funding source, to say that that's not a good practice. Well then, Mr. Byrne, ask the governor to send us down another funding source and we'll swap it out. But if this bill passes, I guarantee you they'll use every penny of that money.
Again, Mr. Speaker, he recommended to us that this is not sound. I think it could have been an easy amendment, but we have no documents in this committee report from OFB either. My question again to the sponsor is, and I would ask Lester this, but he's not here. So we are relying on the words of the sponsor without any written documents to really support any of the answers. So my next question is, in making a change to the law to allow for associated pre-development stage expenses, does that mean that these pre-development stage expenses were not included in the solicitation? Did we not ask them that before they're going to construct, they're going to tear down? And if not, does that mean that we have to wait for a solicitation on this pre-development, a new solicitation for the pre-development stage expenses? I would actually like DPW and BBMR to answer this, Mr. Speaker. I think this is, again, one of those questions that why can't the people of Guam get the answers to it? Why can't policymakers get the answers when we're going to make the decisions here? Why are we denying a committee of the whole? What inconvenience is that for
Ma'am,
us?
you asked for yield.
No, I didn't.
You asked
Yes,
for
sure.
the yield.
Please yield.
Okay. Would you yield to the question?
I do yield. And I, for one, Mr. Speaker, fortunately, I'm not suffering from amnesia on the floor here. When we were in the budget season, in the session that was contemplating all sorts of appropriations, and we can go back to the record once again, Mr. Lester Carlson, time and time again, talked about the need for the appropriation, that it was not going to be debt service. It was going to do handling compound interest, handling pre-development. And for some reason, we just didn't include the language. That's why they keep requesting it. Mr. Speaker, it is absolutely dumbfounding to me to think that the governor's office, Lester Carlson, the BBMR director, would basically beg for this language. And I say beg, I can show you text. And they don't have the authority for pre-development activities. The only authority that they don't have is that it's not explicit in the language. Those simple words were the ones who are missing. And maybe we'll be on with Lester on the radio tomorrow as traditional from time to time, but those are his words and I can read them back to him. So if we go back to the record once again during the discussion on the budget and the need for this appropriation was never going to be the first debt service payment on the financing after it was already complete and the project was complete, and we now have the debts that have arrived. It was all those. That's why it's not a Toyota Celica or Corolla or whatever else, and it's going to be a Lexus, with the thing they kept selling us. Why we needed to appropriate, Mr. Speaker. That's why, if they don't believe that they could have done pre-development activities such as demolition, such as a list of projects that they need to do, then they never would have asked us for the language. Unless they're just in an exercise of futility. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That makes absolutely no sense. It's absolutely not an answer to my question. My question is, did the solicitation that was awarded in November 2025 include pre-development stage expenses? It's a yes or no. It's Lester should know. The contractor who was awarded probably knows. The governor must know. DPW must know. Or was DPW going to take that on themselves? It's really a question. Is it in the procurement or not? Was it solicited? Did they already know that's what they're going to do, and now we're fixing the law after the fact? Because again, and none of that answered that question as to whether it's in the protest, why wasn't it in the solicitation in the beginning? How does this affect the protest? Did they already solicit for pre-development stage expenses, or are we going to have to start a new procurement for that particular part of rebuilding Simon Sanchez? Again, the award was made according to the media interview of the governor. She said it was awarded in November, 3 days prior, or when she announced the groundbreaking. And 3 days later was when the stay was granted on November 19. The protesters claim this is a pre-award protest. So even that is not clear. I also want to know why, if the protest was made in November, what is the status? It's not at the OPA. This is a protest made to the agency, DPW. I think they're awaiting DPW's response. And I want to know, unless we just haven't seen it, what is it? What is causing that delay? Is it this? Are they waiting for this? Are they waiting for this after the fact amendment of the law that they already used to solicit procurement? You know, I feel because we're supposed to be ready to go. And they really blamed the protests as the reason why we're not ready to go. And now I want to know, is that something else that we're not ready to go on? When they said, come down and watch us demolish this building, it's going to be grand. Now, there's a lot of backtracking. I would really think, I would like to hear directly from those people who are involved in this procurement. If the BBMR kept saying that to the OFB during budget, then it should have been honored. It wasn't for some reason. So I just have a lot of concerns without having direct answers from those involved. Mr.
You're very welcome, ma'am. On the bill, any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? Gentlelady from Barragata, ma'am, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I sent a document to the session to request that every member have a copy of it. So they don't take my word for it. They could see it for themselves. What I'm saying is accurate. So I would like to make the motion to append that document to the committee report.
Let me see the document first. Let's take a recess. Where's that document? Back from recess. Senator Parrish, you have.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I know a lot has been said about what exists in law, right? And in law, it's pretty broad. It states that for the financing, the contractor may use, so basically it states that, if I could just go straight to 58D 108 financing, it states to minimize the cost of the government financing utilized by the contractor to fund the construction of the FF&E services for the Simon Sanchez School shall be through tax-exempt obligations or other financial instruments, provided that such financing is available at an interest rate of no more than 8.5%. The contractor may use an alternative method of financing, including but not limited to short-term debt, mortgage, loan, federally guaranteed loan, or loan by an instrumentality of the USA, if financing will better serve the needs of the people of Guam, subject to approval by Y Legislature and Guahan. And so it would seem that this sub-bill, there's no need for it because one would think that these alternative financing is included in that broad category. So community development financial institutions, if it can better serve, right, if it can come at a cheaper rate. Unfortunately, what we're seeing, so it has to be subject by approval of the Y Legislature and Guahan. So unfortunately, what we're seeing here is in the application of the procurement itself, so the document that I had passed out, the response by DPW to one of the offerers was that basically that they, I guess if you can read it, the response, the Makaha Act allows for the new Simon Sanchez SSHS to be alternatively financed through short-term debt, mortgage loan, federally guaranteed loan, or loan by instrumentality of the U.S. if such financing will better serve the needs of the people of Guam, subject to approval of Y Legislature. And then it goes on to say any departure from the financing authorized must be better than municipal bonds secured by GITA. However, given the need to obtain legislative approval for alternative financing, this will set the project completion back and disrupt the schedule set forth in the RFP. And so this is the concern that I have here today. We still have a live procurement. There's been a protest lodged. There has been no resolution on this protest. And to change the procurement in midstream is going to complicate matters. Rather than wait for this to resolve, I think that it's folly to try to change the rules of the game midstream and end up possibly with more protests on the plate of DPW. Because now we have one aggrieved protester. By changing the rules of the game, it might invite others to protest. And so my advice is really to take precaution. Let this procurement resolve before we meddle in it. And it clearly states, this is the public document, which is available and has been read by many members of our community, that to go through legislative approval will set the project completion back and disrupt the schedule set forth in the RFP. And I think that, if we are here for the purpose of moving Simon Sanchez Rebuild forward, what we're doing is the opposite with this substitute bill, as is stated in black and white in this procurement document. And the other thing I stated earlier was that the procurement law is not restrictive. What matters is the purpose. Are we upholding the purposes and policies, the overarching policies of the procurement law? And one of those is to ensure a fair, equitable treatment of all persons who deal with the procurement system. Transparency and fairness are essential preconditions for containing corruption in public procurement. Transparency renders abuse difficult and increases the likelihood of detection. As bidders must trust in the fairness of the process to participate in a tender, the perception of transparency is crucial in attracting the largest possible number of tenderers and increasing competition. So this specific language highlights CDFIs. There are only 2 CDFIs in Guam currently registered. That's Community First and Cortec. Cortec is the winning bidder or winning offer of this. So the one protesting is going to see this bill and have even a greater claim, or they can add to their protest. What was once they even offered a simple solution to their protest now can become a bigger, long drawn out protest here. Because now there's a sense of bias, which goes against procurement law. So, colleagues, my advice to you is to wait till this procurement is cured and not move headstrong into this without knowing the full consequences. And considering federal taxpayers' dollars are at risk, should the protesters seek remedies after an award? We don't know the full extent. And procurement law allows for that, allows for remedies after an award, which is monetary compensation. We are already scrapping every dollar. As you know, every budget session, we fight over every dollar. And to become penny smart, but dollar foolish, I guess, I don't know what the term is, but if we are if we're going to lose more money on this, it doesn't hurt to really take the precaution at this time. We can have a public hearing on this. Maybe we might even improve the process. But then again, I don't want to make any recommendations because we are interrupting a live procurement, and that should be sacrosanct. To have to change the rules in the midstream is highly not recommended, considering unintended consequences. I know what we see in law, but is different from what is being practiced, too. What these documents show, what I have provided to the body, clearly shows that DPW, is very cognizant that they want to get this construction done. Having to put in alternative financing is going to put us back. And we know when we delay procurement, the inflationary cost, the cost of the supplies dramatically increases. We do not have that luxury on Guam. We do not have those deep pockets. Let's trust the system. Let them cure this protest and not get involved. There's so much at stake. The community of Simon Sanchez, they have been put under extreme hardship over decades. Are we the body to add to that? Let's really think about the information, the evidence before us. There's no rushing this, but there is, through this bill, it would delay the rebuild of Simon Sanchez as it is written or as it is substituted. Thank you.
Thank you. On the bill. Any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? Any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? Last call. Any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? Gentleman from Ipan, sir, you recognize.
Sidus Masia, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to rise and speak on the bill as substituted and as substituted again. Mr. Speaker, I think the arguments that have been laid out have been very compelling relative to the violations of the open government law. Again, I just respectfully disagree with your ruling, and I just can't help but think back when I was in the media, and I'm very lucky to serve with some of my colleagues from the media, but back when I was in the media, it was a big deal to violate the open government law. It's a pretty big deal. So I just find it a little ironic how some of my good colleagues in here who used to care about that kind of thing now don't think it's a big deal at all. And I think what's unfortunate is that the bill, as heard in the public hearing, I anticipated would have passed very smoothly. There was nothing really controversial about it. But this offensive section, which again the director of, and I know in the opening the author had said that Adelup had begged for this, but the director of BBMR had said that he wanted to wash his hands, and he didn't want his name to be associated at all with this new section that was added. And this is all about financing, which is different from what the bill had entertained when it was introduced. And so the director of BBMR wanted it to be very clear that this section, as the author said in his opening, can be attributed to Mr. Henry Taitano, who, yes, the author is correct. Anybody can come to any public hearing and make any kind of suggestion. That's how it goes. But when you have an individual who is known to be affiliated with a company that's involved with the bid of this project, I mean, I don't know if he's still affiliated or maybe he's moved on to another interested party. We just don't know, Mr. Speaker. And that's why I raised the point. So yes, anybody could come and make a suggestion, but you have to sometimes question the motive of these suggestions if you have your head on straight. And that's what I'm doing, Mr. Speaker. I question it. And it's unfortunate because I can tell the author, really thinks that this is something good. And it might well be, but we just don't know. We just don't know because we can't ask the questions. And we can't ask the questions because normally something as substantively, materially different like this to be included in a bill would normally warrant a ruling that it should have its own public hearing. And that would be the appropriate setting for us to ask Mrs. Garcia or Mr. Taitano or Director Arreola what the impact of this would be. Well, thankfully, we have good senators like my friend from Barrigada to show us exactly what the impact is going to be. And it's taken such a long time to get to where we are with Simon Sanchez. And unfortunately, where we are is nowhere. And this section is going to jeopardize the whole thing. They're going to have to throw out this. There's going to be lawsuits. We could be looking at years of trials just because the legislature, the majority, the author, and his co-sponsors decided to meddle with this procurement. And that's my characterization of it. I wish I could say it's different, but I just can't because we didn't hear this idea. What we did hear was that the director of GITA didn't feel comfortable even addressing this language because she mentioned, as we all know, there's an ongoing protest that this language could impact, that this language could jeopardize the procurement. And again, I thank my colleague from Barrigada for raising that point. And I just also find it interesting that the question was asked by a co-sponsor of the bill. They asked the director of GITA, hey, what do you think about this language from this Mr. Henry Taitano guy? And she said,
Point of information,
I
I'm
don't
not
wanna...
a co-sponsor of the bill, thank you.
Yeah, so she said she didn't even want to talk about it. Didn't feel comfortable. Hadn't even seen it. And so again, what's happening here now is we have politics inserting itself into the middle of this procurement process. And I don't know who they're interfering in the process for. We just don't know, because this was not vetted. This was not heard. This was not put before the people of Guam. And it's almost like gang rule in here. Like we can't even proceed because your votes haven't showed up yet. And that's how we're doing things. We're not doing things based on the merits. We're not doing things based on the points of order. We're not doing things based on the rules. We're doing things based on might is right. And I just have to say, the people of Guam are watching. You guys are caught up rolling downhill. I don't know what the motive is, but the people of Guam see all of it. We saw in the election last election, Mr. Speaker, how many people lost their seats in this House. They're watching. And the arguments have been very compelling, very accurate, very valid, but they've been very dismissed because you have the votes. Well, just to remind my colleagues, the people of Guam have more votes than you, and they're watching. And they don't deserve this bait and switch shenanigans. This is the bill as it was introduced to cover the pre-development things like bulldozing the Simon Sanchez, clearing the area. Everybody pretty much agrees that that's okay. Now, the new bill has Mr. Taitano's amendment, which we don't know what it does. We don't know how it's going to impact. We don't know whose side it's going to help. And we don't know that because they're willing to pervert the rules to push this agenda forward. The people of Guam, they deserve to have this heard. I don't understand why we're sidestepping this process. Well, I do understand why. We're sidestepping the process because they have the votes. And that's the only reason. I think anybody who serves the people understands the rules. I know you guys understand the rules, so you must be willingly flipping them to pursue this agenda, whoever's agenda it is. Because it's not the people of Guam's agenda. They're going to drive this procurement down into the ditch. We're going to see lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, and who knows if we'll ever see the groundbreaking. So, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make a motion to just send this back to committee. I think I've made a compelling argument about this offensive section. I mean, maybe they just strike out the section and we proceed forward with the bill as introduced, with the bill as it was heard, Mr. Speaker. And so, that's my motion.
Hey, there was a motion on the floor. Okay, there was a motion on the floor to send the bill back to the committee. There has been
Can I just amend my motion? And if you would indulge me, Mr. Speaker, we save a tree. I'd like to make a motion to amend out this entire section from Mr. Taitano.
You send it back to committee or a motion to amend? Which one you want?
I'll try which one do you want me to try first?
You want me to speak for Chris Barnett?
No, I'll motion to strike this section here. Amend the bill by striking out
So you're gonna withdraw your previous motion?
I withdraw Mr. Speaker, I'd like to withdraw my motion to send it back to committee, and instead I'd like to proffer to amend the bill. And if my colleagues would indulge me, not in writing, it's just a simple strike through page 2, lines 1 through 17. The section that was put here by Mr. Taitano, that would be the motion.
Okay, there's a motion to delete on page 2, lines 1 through 17, and there's been an objection. All those in favor of the motion to delete, please indicate by raising your hands. Motion fails. You still have the floor.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, I'd now like to make a motion to send the bill back to committee. And the reason why I want to send the bill back to committee is because this section that came from Mr. Taitano again was not publicly heard. It's, I believe, I think it is a violation of the open government law. I'm not necessarily opposed to entertaining this in a public hearing setting, but I want to be able to ask the questions for the people of Guam. And, you know, just for the sake of accountability and transparency, I really plead with my colleagues. It's the right thing to do. You know, we didn't see this in the bill in the public hearing. Gita, you know, although the author says that they haven't objected, they don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. That's not objecting. That's not addressing it because they're fearful that it's going to jeopardize the protest. They're fearful that it's going to jeopardize the procurement. Mr. Speaker.
There's a motion to send bill number 235-38 COR as amended, as substituted on the floor, back to committee. There is an objection. All those in favor of sending bill 235-38 COR as substituted on the floor back to committee, please indicate by raising your hands. Motion fails. On the bill as substituted. Gentleman from Talafofo, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of Bill 235 as was substituted here today by the Finance Committee Chair and the good Senator from Tamuning. This bill does clarify this branch's intent in appropriating $16.3 million through the General Appropriations Act of 2026, Public Law 38-60, for the Simon A. Sanchez High School construction leaseback payments. Mr. Speaker, I thank Gita for confirming during the bill's public hearing that with respect to the price tag from 2023 of $166.3 million for the new Sanchez High School, the Gita administrator stated on the record that they are not asking to increase the price tag, but they are just saying that in order to complete the project, they would ask for an additional amount to help move the project forward. I heard it with my own ears. And some of the retiring speakers, sir, Mr. Speaker, were nowhere in this building at that time, but I know what I heard from Gita. Mr. Speaker, it has been 10 years, more than 10 years, since Public Law 32-120 from February 10, 2014, authorized the pledge or reservation of a portion of funds generated through the reevaluation of real property taxes as a source of payment for a municipal lease financing secured for the renovation or construction of a new Simon Sanchez High School in Gigo, for Gigo and the surrounding communities. I've been here 1 year. Many in this room were around when this was passed. And here we are, recognizing the government of Guam's debt ceiling. Public Law 32-120 anticipated the possibility of engaging a private sector contractor to provide long-term financing obtained through tax-exempt obligations or other competitive alternative financing based on long-term leasebacks to the government of Guam. As substituted on the floor this morning, the bill recognizes additional financing options, including but not limited to community development financial institution programs, as we heard about this already this afternoon, to include the Capital Magnet Fund, the EB-5 Immigrant Investor Program, New Markets Tax Credit Financing, the Community Reinvestment Act, motivated lending, or any other federally authorized financing mechanism. Mr. Speaker, with this bill, we will have the policy in place to fund costs associated with pre-development tasks, which according to Gita, include but are not limited to demolition, clearing, and grading ahead of the actual school construction. Mr. Speaker, I trust that the new superintendent of education who coincidentally is also the author of Public Law 32-120 from 2014, will do everything in her authority and power to prioritize the development of a new Simon Sanchez High School by assembling, with the help of the executive, the relevant stakeholders and resources from all across the government of Guam to move things forward once and for all. This capital improvement project must be a priority. Upon passage, we will all need to see results from the executive branch. Again, we need to move forward. I've heard a lot today that I'm baffled. I am absolutely baffled, Mr. Speaker. As we've been leading up to this session, committee reports, the committee had even reached out. But then what? Seen it with this bill and others, and Mr. Speaker, I'm saying when we're here to work. And the people of Guam are expecting us to do that. This bill does that to get this project to work. And I appreciate the time this afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. On the bill as substituted, any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? On the bill. Any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? Gentle lady from Agate, ma'am, you're recognized.
Wow, Mr. Speaker, this is interesting. Sometimes I wonder if I'm working in the Guam Congress building or next door at the Guam Theater, you know, where they perform drama and plays. But thank you. I think I can speak for most of my colleagues here in the 38th Guam Legislature, and certainly for a majority of our constituency here on our island when I say that Simon Sanchez students have waited long enough for a campus. They endured enough trials and tribulations, including perpetual double sessions and feet dragging from this government, including past legislatures. Bill 235, even in its amended form, just takes them one step closer to fruition, and the Sharks having their own home once again. A home that is structurally safe and conducive to learning, and one that we must ensure can endure the next half century because it is rebuilt right and is maintained properly. At the public hearing for this bill, I questioned Gita. I'm the one that everybody is talking about that asked Gita and asked about the testimony from Henry Titano, who advocated for this amendment. I questioned Gita Administrator Tina Garcia if she had any issues with this provision. I've never had an issue with this bill and its intent. And I spoke to Gita about this particular amended bill. And that is why I stand in support of this bill. And I encourage my colleagues to give Gita a call so they can hear what Gita has to say about it. So any attempts to block this bill will be disingenuous, drama, because this body and every member in it has vocally and loudly proclaimed from the rooftops to the Simon Sanchez High School students, parents, faculty, and the surrounding community that construction of this school is a priority. So don't stand in its way now for the cameras and the headlines and the sound bites. Take a stand instead for that community you promised to move this forward and vote for Bill 235 as amended, as substituted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill as substituted, any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? On the bill as substituted, any other speakers wishing to speak on the bill? Gentleman from Tamuning, sir, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I stand in strong support of Bill number 235-38 CRR as amended by the Committee on Finance and Government Operations. You know, we heard about, of course, the delay or possible delay. You know, the second co-author of the bill is the committee chair on education. Do you think he would put his name as a second co-author if this bill had any resemblance or delay tactics written into this bill? Colleagues, this bill is about keeping Simone A. Sanchez High School project moving forward and making sure that we remove any remaining barriers that have kept this campus in limbo for far too long. Under the amended language, Mr. Speaker, the legislature appropriates $16,377,125 from the net projected unobligated fiscal year 2025 general fund revenue balance, as identified, of course, in the June 2025 CRER for the Simon Sanchez leaseback payments and associated pre-development stage expenses. Just as important, the bill makes our intent clear. These expenditures are an authorized use of that unobligated balance, so the project can proceed without bureaucratic second-guessing and unnecessary delays. Mr. Speaker, Simone Sanchez High School students, families, teachers, and the entire community have waited far too long. This is about delivering a safe, modern campus and doing our part to end double session so students can learn in a stable environment that supports academics, extracurricular activities, and student life in general, Mr. Speaker. Let me say this plainly. Simon Sanchez Sharks deserve better. They deserve better than the aging facilities and years of uncertainty. They deserve the same dignity and opportunity we would demand for any student on this island, a campus that reflects their potential, their pride, and their future. I also want to thank, of course, the bipartisan team behind this measure, Senator Duenas, of course, Senator Borja, Vice Speaker Ada, Senator Barnes, Senator San Augustine, and all members who are focused on getting to work for the kids. But Mr. Speaker, again, I would end with this. I urge my colleagues to vote in support of Bill 235-38 CRR. Again, as was a retiring speaker had mentioned, the theatrics of this whole thing is just what it is, theatrics. The chair of the Education Committee has put his name to this and has done extensive research in this particular bill and would never allow any co-sponsorship on something that would further delay the rebuild of Simone Sanchez High School. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, sir. On the bill substituted, any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? On the bill as substituted, any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? No other senators. Senator Duenas, you can close.
Sijus Masi, Mr. Speaker. And thank you to my colleagues who have particularly risen in support of this proposed bill as substituted in the committee and substituted on the floor, 235-38, and their continued support. First of all, Mr. Speaker, I want to say that in questions that arose on the floor of research of my staff include a former GITA director and a former director of the Department of Administration have served honorably. Mr. Speaker, I also want to make it clear that notes sent to me once again by those who have done procurement extensively and gone to market in San Francisco and New York say there is no interruption of a live procurement. The procurement was based on a law which stated financings can be pursued with the approval of the legislature, which is in this legislation. That is already in law. We are doing nothing outside of the procurement solicitation. Mr. Speaker, I have to note with a little bit of, I guess, confusion with many of the opponents, at least 2 or 3 of them rising and saying this is not necessary. And that's perhaps why, and I thank legal counsel for sitting down with me and correcting, basically not adding a subsection because we're referring to the law, the McCahon Act, which authorized the financing options. And these are options as well that were simply enumerated. It perplexes me to say these are not necessary, but they're going to jeopardize the procurement and take us into legal mayhem. Those 2 points do not make sense. They're not cohesive. They don't even complement one another. Something that's not necessary because they believe it's already contemplated in the financing authorized in the McCahon Act cannot be of harm then. And it must be what a couple of my colleagues, retiring speakers, said, maybe for theatrical purposes. Mr. Speaker, another thing, we all know, and one of the reasons why there is offerings of local financial institutions, like registered, like one of my colleagues, retiring speakers, mentioned, is because I can tell you that more than likely, when this procurement goes forward, whether it's through a denial of the protest or an acceptance of the protest and going forward, everybody will be scrambling for these offerings because they're good offerings. They're offerings that provide opportunities under the EB-5 program because we have such a difficult time getting engineers to work on these projects, and it can be outsourced. And also the fact that local offerings have an opportunity to make some money and be part of a procurement that more than likely, and an offering that's going to be oversubscribed, Mr. Speaker. I'm counting on that when they finally end up in New York. Once again, Mr. Speaker, I take absolute exception with some of the comments made on the floor without any substantive knowledge that we go into legal abyss. The second thing I take exception to is, Mr. Speaker, this was publicly heard. And the Henry Titano that I think is somewhat being maligned on the floor here, put it in the record, and my staff decided, you know what? That's a good idea to substitute on the floor. So it was publicly heard. And until the substitute hit the floor, the theater, the curtain went up and the actors showed up. That's the simple truth. Not even when this was in rules were the actors activated. I guess they maybe sprained an ankle or the like, Mr.
Point
Speaker.
of information,
So,
this bill came
Mr.
out of the
Speaker.
Committee on Rules without the substitute bill, Mr. Speaker, without the language that's in question.
Mr. Speaker, my comment was that this was publicly heard because there was testimony in the record from the maligned Henry Titano. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to close on this bill, and I now make a motion that Bill 235-38, as substituted in the committee, further substituted on the floor, be placed in the third reading voting file. Jesus Masi.
On the motion to move substitute Bill number 235-38 COR as substitute by the committee, as amended by the committee, substitute on the floor, and further substitute on the floor, be moved to the third reading. Are there any objections? There is an objection. All those in favor of moving the bill to the third reading, please indicate by raising your hand. Motion passes.
Point of information, Mr. Speaker. like the record to be corrected, as the sponsor of the bill we just moved to the voting file said that the section was publicly heard. It was not publicly heard. Just because someone shows up and provides testimony, that does not constitute a public hearing of a bill, Mr. Speaker, and you know that.
It's been gavelled in. Thank you very
Si
much.
Masi.
Thank you. Senator Dueñas, you're still up, sir. Bill number, pardon me? 1 minute recess. Legislature is back from recess. Senator Dueñas, you're recognized on Bill 240-38 LS.
Si Masi, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, at this time, I move to place Bill 240-38 LS, introduced by myself, Christopher M. Dueñas, V. Anthony Ada, Jesse A. Lujan, Vicente A. V. Borja, Sabrina Salas Montanani, and Sean Gumatauto, into the third reading file, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to speak to the bill.
Can you go ahead and read out the title?
Yes, once again, Si Masi, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the title of this bill is an act to amend Section 61309, Article 3, Chapter 61, Title 21, Guam Code Annotated, relative to adding the temporary workforce housing as a permitted use for M1 light industrial zones.
You can proceed.
Si Masi, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, to open, let's talk about what this bill does. What this bill does is amend subsection 61309, Title 21, GCA, to add temporary workforce housing as permitted use in M1 industrial zones with clear guardrails and standards. Mr. Speaker, why does this matter right now? Guam's military buildup has significantly increased demand for workforce housing. M1 zone temporary housing can be rapid, cost-effective, and a response that still supports economic activity. Second point, Guam's housing shortage, especially rental units, has been exacerbated by the rise in temporary workers, contributing to spikes in both housing prices and rental prices. In other words, occupying other properties because of the lack of approved workforce housing. This has been enumerated in the committee report, particularly by the Guam Association of Realtors. They're the subject matter experts. Mr. Speaker, this is a common sense approach to locate workforce housing where it's least intrusive in an industrial zone, M1 light industrial, so residential neighbors do not absorb the full impact. Mr. Speaker, this bill is another tool in the toolbox to help keep Guam's limited housing inventory affordable by providing a regulated option that helps prevent local families from being squeezed out of the rental market. Mr. Speaker, another point is it removes unnecessary bureaucracy and provides a practical option to respond to demand without lowering standards. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to speak to the key safeguards and standards. There are no shortcuts here. No waivers, no shortcuts. The bill does not grant or imply waivers for power and water infrastructure, occupancy, sanitary, construction, or other safety standards. Number 2, baseline infrastructure plus public health requirements must have adequate sanitary sewer, minimum fire flow standards, e.g. 6-inch water line, and comply with health and safety regulations, including OSHA. Another point, Mr. Speaker, site security and quality of life requirements requires a perimeter fence, at least 6 feet chain link fence quality, and landscaping plan plus development plan addressing sleeping, sanitation, food services, security, medical care, transportation, and recreation. Another point, Mr. Speaker, time limits and accountability. Approvals are for an initial 24 months, then annual renewals with inspection and a public hearing before GLUC renewals. It keeps workforce housing in the right zone. GLUC shall not approve workforce housing development in any zone other than M1. Mr. Speaker, once again, the committee record, in the committee, and of course the record will show, the bill was supported by everyone who testified. It is substantially similar to a measure in the 37th legislature that never advanced and never had an opportunity to receive a floor vote. This bill gives the legislature an opportunity to finally act. Bottom line, Mr. Speaker, this is a targeted, regulated tool to address a real workforce housing crunch without compromising health, safety, or infrastructure standards, and without pushing the burden onto residential neighborhoods. Mr. Speaker, just a few extra comments. We all know that right now there is a continuing boom of construction associated with the military buildup and other projects that are on tap and forthcoming. We know that there is an aggressive plan and contemplated missile site defense for our island, which will require construction in certain areas. We know, Mr. Speaker, and we hope, I've heard comments from the governor, members of this legislature, and others, that in fact today at the luncheon at the Chamber of Commerce, there was a discussion about, once again, topics being brought up in Washington about the impact of the military buildup on Guam, in particular housing and other infrastructure needs. Under the Calvo administration, there was a real big push as well that what's good inside the fence and for inside the fence should be good for outside the fence. There perhaps may be, Mr. Speaker, and I hope it will be, when projects come forward to address this severe housing shortage and need for manpower that Guam once again cannot produce for that construction. That, if and when I believe should happen, Mr. Speaker, will require once again housing of a potential workforce being approved coming to Guam for outside the fence projects. Right now, Mr. Speaker, it is a cumbersome, arduous, and minimum 8 to 10 months, sometimes up to 18 months, Most consultants who go before the GLUC will tell you with clarity that that's true, to get projects for workforce housing forward. That's why they're occupying any property that they can right now, to just not have to deal with that logistical issue and the time, expense, and everything else in accordance with doing that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hope to gain the support of our colleagues on the floor, and I certainly am thankful for the co-sponsors that I have on this bill. And hopefully we can move this forward and once and for all, Mr. Speaker, identify suitable temporary workforce housing that does not shortcut any of our regulatory processes, that has a after 24-month review process, and that has to ensure all of the things that we ensure right now in regular workforce housing, with the exception of the grueling task of going through the GLUC process. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I know about that process because back in 2010 and early 2009, I was the Director of Land Management. And as being the Director of Land Management, you are an ex officio member of, in fact, the Executive Director of ex officio, the Guam Land Use Commission. And I sat there when Build Up 1 was proposed. And I can tell you so many properties where consultants were coming forward trying to get converted to workforce housing to include some former hotels, small hotels, motels, other places. And believe me, it took a very long time. In fact, 3 or 4 of those, Mr. Speaker, just never went forward, because they figured we'll just find another way, which they have found other ways to do this. I think it's a disservice for the need that exists, and not just the potential, but the real need going forward, Mr. Speaker, to provide this very critical opportunity, not just because Guam is experiencing the build-up, but because we need a build-out. We need a build-out of housing, Mr. Speaker. We need a build-out of other infrastructure projects for our island, Mr. Speaker. And I can tell you right now, if you go to the Trades Academy and GCC and every other training institution, they will be forthright and honest with you. We will only, for the foreseeable future, provide for a fraction as what is needed to exponentially turn the tide, get housing on Guam and other infrastructure projects, and that's going to require outside labor. And right now, we are absolutely behind the curve and behind the times on that. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I ask my colleagues to register their support for this bill, and Sizus Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, sir. On bill number 240-38, LS, are there any senators wishing to speak on the bill? Are there any senators wishing to speak on the bill? Gentleman from Talifofo, sir, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to register my support for this Bill 240. And I want to thank the Finance Committee Chair for introducing it. And as it does mirror a very similar proposal from the previous term. And although the Committee on Health, Land, and Justice in the last legislature conducted a public hearing on an earlier version on November 7th, 2023, based on legislative records, a committee report was not made available, which means the measure was not reported out for consideration by the previous legislature. And the number of instances that I've come across in just trying to research some of the bills that have been presented to us over the last 13 months, and really no explanation to why those records are not there. But Mr. Speaker, based on media reports covering this issue from as far as back as 2024, it was reported that military contractors face tight restrictions on getting foreign laborers to Guam and are really unwilling to wait. The Department of Labor announced at the time that the over 5,000 H-2B workers on Guam, already a 4-decade high number, was expected to swell to as many as 7,000 by 2025. According to the Guam Department of Labor, during a public hearing in 2024 regarding a separate measure authorizing temporary business licenses for home rentals. As of May 2025, the Guam Department of Labor had received approval for 9,000 H-2B workers, but only 4,913 of them were available for construction projects due to a very limited inventory of workforce housing in Guam. According to the Guam Association of Realtors, its members were placing construction workers in houses and apartments, which led to the displacement of the local housing inventory. Mr. Speaker, we heard the same information during the public hearing on Bill 240, which was held just a couple of weeks ago, January 9th, 2026 to be exact. Mr. Speaker, acknowledging the concerns that were raised by some policymakers during the discussion on a similar bill during the previous legislature, including the size of workforce housing facilities and their impact on the safety of workers and surrounding communities, I asked those in attendance during the January 9, 2026 public hearing for information regarding complaints which have been made against construction workers located in established workforce facilities, single-family homes, and apartment units as they relate to public safety, health, or the environment. Mr. Speaker, the response? Todzat. Nothing. Zero complaints. Based on this, Mr. Speaker, I reiterate my support for Bill 240, and I thank the bill's author for prioritizing the establishment of temporary workforce housing, which I personally believe can and should be repurposed in the future, potentially for affordable housing units that would benefit many of Guam's families. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to share my thoughts on this critical issue.
Thank you, sir. On the bill, any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? On the bill, any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? Gentlelady from Zonia, you recognize me?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a great thing to have an expedited process for approval of any use of property. Right now, our law requires that any construction of workforce housing be done on an M1 property, and that it be done as a conditional use of that M1 property, meaning it has to be approved by the Guam Land Use Commission. And this bill would bypass the Guam Land Use Commission and say that process is no longer necessary for workforce housing. And that if you want to build workforce housing on an M1 property, you can do it without any of the things that the Guam Land Use Commission had previously reviewed. So some of those things you can see from the striked out provisions in the bill. It removes the agency review process. It doesn't allow the Guam Land Use Commission, it would not allow the Guam Land Use Commission, if this bill passes, to put any conditions on the use or the construction of that property that meet the requirements for that particular area, for example. It's not clear. This is going to be now, right now, the Guam Land Use Commission has, when they review the properties, they approve it or not approve it, they can put conditions on it, and they also are responsible for enforcing those conditions. And this would put that on, I guess, the permitting agencies to ensure that these particular requirements are met, but not any other requirements the Guam Land Use Commission may have put on other workforce housing projects because of the conditions in that particular area. So there would be no review like that. The, you know, it sounds great, but I have to just keep thinking, why do we have the Guam Land Use Commission? Why aren't all uses then treated the same? And I think it was because there was a big concern about workforce housing, the impacts that it has on a community. And while if it's next to some of these areas that are allowed in an M1, maybe it's not a problem at all. Maybe it's a great benefit, in fact. But also an M1 is permitted to have any of the other uses in the other zones, in commercial zone, R2 zones, R1 zones, meaning there can be residences in these M1 zoned properties as well. And that's why when the Guam Land Use Commission looks and you're all in an M1, you're adjacent to a residence. That's sometimes something that they would pay particular concern to. The other thing that this bill bypasses, and this is from the fiscal note that was given to us, it says it repeals provisions such as the GLUC's responsibility to impose conditions and review applications, the approval and certification of land management, the application of a building permit from the Department of Public Works, and the application of a sanitary and workers' dormitory permit from the Department of Public Health and Social Services. And he also says, the Bureau notes that should the subject bill become enacted, removing several revenue-generating provisions, such as applications and renewals with the GLUC, building permits from DPW, and sanitary and workers' dormitory permits from the DPHSS, may affect revenue collections. I'm not as concerned as the revenue collections as I am with just bypassing the review of these agencies. They are the only ones that we are looking to protect residences. You know, I don't think an auto shop next to workforce needs that much protection, but residences do. And that's all. So just because we do have M1 sometimes adjacent to residences, I think I like that protection for our residential residents. The other thing is, when we talked about, we did waive all of these requirements at one point because we were trying to fast track during COVID. We waived the review, and but at that time the mayors were very clear. They still wanted to be involved in this process. They still wanted that notice that is currently required and being repealed by this bill. They wanted that notice that there is going to be a workforce housing in their village, and they wanted to know where. And I believe residents would want to know the same. So at that time, despite waiving some of the requirements, we still required that they were going to put up the signs and give notice and allow those residents to know and state their objections to the GLUC. It was a fast track of the process. And some mentioned that this bill was proposed before, and that's correct. I remember the hearing, and I remember the review, and I remember the correspondence back and forth with the Department of Land Management, who also, in previous reiterations of this bill, had asked that the notice requirements, notice to adjacent landowners, notice to the mayors, the villages, that those remain in place, and those aren't removed in this bill. And also, the Department of Land Management had told us at the time that there was no backlog of workforce housing applications with GLUC. There may be backlog in other areas, but at the GLUC, especially at that time, there were not. And in fact, GLUC, in their correspondence, told us at that time, this was in 2024, that they had far exceeded, their approvals had far exceeded the actual use of workforce housing. So I know it's been cited by many, and I don't want to doubt them, but I'm just saying, when they say there's a backlog in the process, I think it's not the GLUC, and it's not somebody's review of these things. It may be an agency is being slow in their review, and many of them have, these same people have proposed that, why don't we just put caps on the agency's timeline to review? But this just wipes them out entirely. So that is my concern. The current ARC, Application Review Committee agencies include the Department of Public Works, the Guam EPA, BSP, the Coastal Management Zone, the Department of Agriculture, Guam Power Authority, Guam Waterworks Authority, and the Parks and Rec Historic Preservation Office. It also requires certified mail notice to owners within a radius of 500 feet. It requires a 4x8 sign on the property that's being rezoned, so everybody knows it, or that there's a conditional use application for workforce housing on this lot, so you can tell how close that is to your residence, for example. There was a notice of public hearing in the newspaper requirement. There was an MP, Municipal Planning Council support required, and of course, a meeting by the GLUC to actually review and ensure that what we're saying they must comply with is actually complied with according to the plans and everything else. So that's all I want to state, Mr. Speaker, is that there are other things we can do to streamline our process, but I think banning public notice of these things or letting residences know is not necessarily necessary, and that we can find ways to do both, and that instead of just a blanket removing everybody from the process and just saying to these contractors, that's what you have to do that. We've never done that before. We require reviews. And so, again, just reading from that fiscal note as to what the impacts are, and just my concerns in general. But I do want, we don't want to have a backlog in workforce. So they're saying, but this is another thing that's not proven in the record, that they're saying right now that workforce housing is being used, they're using residences, they're using apartments, they're using hotels. And that if we pass this, we're going to have more residences available to us. And that really, there's not proven anywhere. It seems to me that the numbers that they're saying exceed our residential capacity. So I don't see that we're going to be protecting residents this way either.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill, any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? On the bill. Any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? Senator Wayne, you can close on the bill.
Mr. Mr. Speaker, and for the record, although I'm having my staff check once again, there's been no objection by any of the regulatory agencies to this bill. Mr. Speaker, I, for one, do have regular conversations with the Guam Association of Realtors. They have a legislative committee, and yeah, maybe I'm one of the guys that, spends a lot of time with them. But I will tell you that it's valuable to me. And Mr. Speaker, I take them for their word because they are the subject matter experts in housing, in knowing that apartment buildings are being used. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, I like mom and pop stores, and I have quite a few in the area where I live. And I can tell you that because I visit them regularly, particularly in 2 or 3 areas, one in particular in Tumuning, but a couple of other areas, I consistently and particularly on the weekends see workers that are here, because I ask them. It's kind of easy to notice, by some of the languages that I'm familiar with. And also, they tend to hang out, of course, with their friends and in groups. And I ask them, I say, hey, are you guys you know, working here on Guam as, you know, foreign workers? And they say, yeah, plenty project, you know, and other things, of course, that are mentioned. So I can tell you anecdotally, that's a little bit more than anecdotal, because where are you staying? Oh, down the road, sir, in the apartment. That's absolutely happening. And another thing, Mr. Speaker, I would like to say is that, you know, I'm sorry, but there is still the need for the sanitary requirements. This does not waive any public health regulations. They will go in, they will inspect, they will make sure adequate sanitation, they will make sure that that 6-inch line serves that area, that building, for fire protection and otherwise. They will ensure that the fencing is up. They will ensure that the recreational needs of those who are here, which probably aren't even insured in any of the apartments where they're at, because they are there, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, I can imagine, I guess as I close, I'm sure there's been abuses from time to time, Mr. Speaker, but I want to say that for most of the companies that I am aware of that bring in labor, they're cognizant of the community. They're cognizant of the community that they live in. They want to be good neighbors. They don't want their construction company, their developed company, to be known for, you know, having a nuisance with regard to their workforce, if it may happen to be in an M1 zone, close to some residential areas. I'd like to believe that they brought this concern for years now to the Guam Association of Realtors and others because they want to do it responsibly. Like many of them who are currently doing it very responsibly. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I remember, and you're probably familiar with this, and maybe folks on the floor will be, that during the pandemic, there was concerns about the workforce that was here. And I know in particular one company, and several companies did respond, to all of the safeguards and everything that they were doing to ensure compliance with the workforce that they had. Some made decisions to send some back if they were capable of doing it, if airlines were still flying folks, if they had stops in their projects. But they were very responsible. They were very responsible to take care of their people. I think any company, and I would pray that any company that needs to avail of this opportunity of not having to navigate a 6, 8, 10, 1 year, 18-month process. I personally sat before at least a 12-month process for one of the hotels in Tamuning next to a very popular store now. I don't think it's proper for me to name. And then they just dumped it. They said, forget it. It was too much. So anyways, with that, Mr. Speaker, I humbly ask that my colleagues see the need for this and share the need and vote in the affirmative of Bill 240-38. Jesus Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to move it to the third reading voting file.
Okay. On the motion to move Bill 240-38 LS to the third reading file, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Borja, you are up.
Loading. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move to place into the third reading file Bill number 251-38, an act to amend subsection 31101 of Chapter 31, Division 4, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to the Guam Community College Board of Trustees composition to enhance business and industry representation, and I wish to speak on the measure.
You can proceed.
Mr. Speaker, colleagues, the Guam Community College plays a critical role in our island's workforce development system. Its mission is clear and practical to prepare residents and students with the skills needed to meet employer demand, support career pathways, and strengthen Guam's economic capacity. Bill number 251 updates the composition of the Board of Trustees to better reflect that mission. Specifically, this measure allows the governor to appoint 2 trustees representing business, industry, and employer organizations while removing the seat that has been designated exclusively for organized labor. This proposal is grounded in governance realities. While the labor-designated seat has recently been filled, a review by the governor's legal counsel determined that individual serving in that role does not meet the statutory requirement of representing a labor organization on Guam. It has also become clear that this requirement has been inconsistently applied in the past. Previous individuals who occupied that position included former Deputy Department of Labor Maria Connolly and former Civil Service Commission Director Eli Hara, both respected public servants, but not representatives of labor organizations as the law currently requires. As a result, the governor is unable to advance the current individual in that seat under the existing statutory language. This illustrates a structural challenge we are addressing. When a board position has eligibility requirements that does not reflect the practical landscape of available representatives, it creates recurring vacancies or appointments that are vulnerable to legal scrutiny. Although the board currently has enough members to establish a quorum, this measure ensures more consistent and sustainable representation moving forward. It allows the board to operate at full strength and brings in perspective directly aligned with GCC's mission of workforce preparation. Strengthening representation from business and industry enhances collaboration with employers who are actively hiring, developing training pipelines, and shaping workforce demand on Guam. This is a practical governance update that promotes stability, clarifies representation, and strengthens GCC's ability to serve students and the island's workforce needs. And I respectfully ask my colleagues to support this measure. Sizuas Masi, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Borja. Anyone on Bill number 251-38 COR would like to speak on the motion? Senator Gumatato, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to speak in support of Bill 251. Mr. Speaker, I support Bill 251 because the Guam Community College, through its board, its leadership, faculty, administrative staff, and community of supporters, continue to demonstrate year after year that GCC is Guam's leader in technical workforce development. GCC's reputation as an effective, efficient, and forward-looking organization did not happen overnight or even over a few years. The organization has transformed from a campus with several modular and concrete structures that I think some of our colleagues might have either visited or attended, to a place where former students and employees who were around in the mid-2000s have since retired would find to be unrecognizable because of its new facilities and the expanded programs that they offer. Mr. Speaker, GCC's transformation over the last 2 decades, in my humble opinion, was made possible under the direction of a very capable and results-driven executive team and board leadership. Bill 251, as drafted, recognizes the kind of expertise and experiences that have led GCC to become what it is today and what has been needed for quite a long time. When asked, the outgoing president of the Guam Community College had known of the challenges with the policy for years. Surely, it was suggested here to policymakers, past and present. Deaf ears no more, Mr. Speaker. Can I add, Mr. Speaker, that through my research of the current board composition, just a couple of notes. Chairperson Leon Guerrero brings management experience in office product solutions and contract management. Vice Chairperson Greeno has years of experience as a nurse and healthcare administrator, and we will be voting to confirm her to a new term very soon. Secretary Padrones is a human resources leader and an educator. Treasurer Ramos is experienced in sales and marketing and in health insurance compliance. Mr. Arreola possesses a background in health insurance administration, real estate, and commercial property management. According to his 2016 appointment packet, Mr. Sablan is a leader in the shipping and cargo movement industry, servicing commercial and military customers. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that the community of the Guam Community College is well served by its past and its current board members who are leaders within their own respective industries. Their credentials and their collective experiences continue to help GCC and its students, most importantly, to respond to the labor needs across the public, private, and military sectors. For these reasons, I strongly endorse Bill 255 and encourage my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, sir. 251. Okay, on the bill, 251. Go ahead. Ma'am, ranking member from Bago Bay, you recognize?
Sizus Masi,
Nice and
Mr.
short.
Speaker. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to rise in support of Bill number 251-38 CORs, authored by the good Chair of Education, and as his Vice Chair, I hope that he could consider me in this inclusion. And as the retiring speaker spoke and shared the perspective from the Guam Community College, I just want to say that the opportunity to enhance the business and the industry representation is a well-balanced approach. So just so that we take it, the governor shall appoint 2 trustees to represent the business industry and employer organizations. The remaining 4 trustees shall be members of the general public as these positions on the board become vacant. And there is another note in this provision, Mr. Speaker, that it says no person may serve as a trustee to this board if that trustee is a government of Guam employee or if the trustee service would amount to any conflict of interest. And this board will consist of 7 trustees, 6 of whom shall be nominated and appointed by the governor with, again, the advice and consent of this legislature. So just want to say I rise in support of this and thank the good Oversight Chair for proffering this. Sainamasi.
Sainamasi, ma'am. On the bill, any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? General lady from Jonia, ma'am, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have no objection to changing what's currently the requirement of 1 trustee to represent organized labor organizations on island. However, the testimony of GFT, or AFT rather, yes, American Federation of Teachers, GCC, had asked in their testimony that the faculty union's non-voting representation on the Board of Trustees is preserved and formally recognized. And I'd just like to ask the sponsor if he would yield if that is, it's not in this bill or in this section of the statute, if that is in fact the case, that has been preserved and formally recognized.
Would the author yield?
Yes, that's been formally recognized, but it's not in the bill.
But where is it? How is it formally recognized?
I said it's not, Mr. Speaker. You're asking if the non-voting member has been formally recognized in the bill? Is she asking? I don't understand the question then, Mr. Speaker.
So it is not formally recognized.
All right, well, that's my concern, is that we're taking out the organized labor organizations, but the recognized labor organization is saying they don't object if we ensure that the faculty union's non-voting representation on the Board of Trustees is preserved and formally recognized. And they said that preserving that union's non-voting seat ensures that as a business and industry voices are strengthened, faculty expertise remains part of the governance framework. This balance promotes collaboration rather than conflict and allows GCC to remain both workforce-driven and academically sound. So that's my concern, and this is part of the testimony, and I'm not sure why that was not addressed. So if that's the only answer, I don't know what to say about that. I'd like to address their concerns.
Thank you very much, ma'am. On the bill, any other senators wishing to speak on the bill? No other senators wishing to speak on the bill? Senator Borja, you can close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to waive closing, and I'd like to move to, I'm going to waive closing, but I'd like to move to make an amendment, or move to amend the bill to add co-sponsors, Mr. Speaker. If I could add, hold on, I just drew a blank. Ranking Member Tina Munoz-Barnes, Senator Sean Gumatautau, Senator Jesse Lujan, Senator Tony Atta, Senator Serena Salas-Matanani, you too, Senator Speaker, and Senator Duenas.
Okay, on the motion to add Senators Tina Munoz-Barnes, Sean Gumatautau, Sabrina Salas-Matanani, Vianne Theata, Chris Duenas, Jesse Lujan, and myself as co-sponsors to the bill. Are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And now I'd like to move Bill number 251-38. COR, as amended in the committee and further amended on the floor to the third reading file for consideration.
On the motion, are there any objections? Hearing and seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Gumatautau, you want to move on your concurrence?
Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I asked and moved to go back to motions.
Okay. On the motion, hearing no objections? You want to go back to legislative concurrence?
I'm sorry, yes, please, sir. I'd like to motion to move back to legislative concurrence.
On the motion, any objections? No objections?
Thank you,
Back
Mr.
at legislative concurrence.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Public Safety, Emergency Management, and the Guam National Guard the nomination of Karen L. Watson, Colonel, U.S. Army, retired, to serve as the Adjutant General of the Guam National Guard and Director of the Department of Military Affairs, with the recommendation to do confirm.
On the motion, are there any objections? Hearing seeing no objection, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Colleagues, do you want to do your... No? Okay. Colleagues, we have two more bills that, and at the request, I'm going to give Senator Talai, she had asked for information from Department of Land Management, am I correct? Give them the opportunity to be able to get to her before 9 a.m. tomorrow. But we come back in at 9 a.m. We have two more bills, the two more land bills to do. And then after that, we'll try to get it as quick because I want to be able to vote no later than 3 p.m. tomorrow. Okay? So with that, we are recessed until 9 a.m. tomorrow.